a large pentagram etched into the ground, the edge of a bubbling cauldron of hot magma, and a couple potential crime scenes. This is what we are going to be looking at today as we cover the top 10 terrifying things Google Maps doesn't want you to see. Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot we have the star. While searching through images, someone stumbled upon an isolated corner of Kazakhstan, and here they found a large pentagram etched into the ground, which of course may have set off some alarm bells. The 5-point star is surrounded by a circle and is very clearly visible, and of course once the image began circling the internet, people were coming up with only the most wild theories and explanation. In the end, it turned out to be the exact opposite of something sinister. It's actually the outline of a park that was made into the shape of a star. The star is so clearly marked because of the roadways, and where there's no road, there's a lot of trees, which makes the symbol stand out even more. It's like the best possible outcome for this one, honestly. A beautiful tree-lined park in the shape of a star. How lovely. In our number 9 spot today we have the bunker. If you were to take a nice little scroll through the deserts of New Mexico, at some point you'd see something etched into the ground. They appear to be 2 large diamonds that are surrounded by a pair of overlapping circles. Okay, likely not a naturally occurring situation, so what could it be? Maybe an ancient geoglyph? Maybe some sort of cool secret Area 51 style place? No, of course it's just allegedly the site of some hidden bunker that belongs to the Church of Scientology. Apparently this cult uses these symbols to guide Scientologists who are returning to Earth after fleeing a planet's Armageddon. Okay. Sure. There are other examples of strange and hidden places that somehow link back to this cult, so it really has me wondering just how many properties and areas that they have and what they're up to. Maybe that explanation really is the truth behind these symbols, but what if it's not? Despite how controversial this cult is, they've managed to grow quite widespread, and they've gained some quite well-known people over the years, like Tom Cruise and John Travolta. So random. In our number 8 spot today we have the Cauldron. Google Earth can basically take you anywhere except for the areas they of course have blocked off for a variety of reasons. And when I say basically anywhere, sometimes I mean even the most absurd places, including right to the edge of a boiling cauldron of lava. That's right, you can head right to the edge of the volcano that is located on an island in the Vanuatu chain in the South Pacific. It is cool because it's likely the closest I'll ever get to seeing this kind of view in real life, but it's also terrifying to look into that cavern that's filled with bright, hot magma. Like, even just looking at this photo, you can almost feel the heat and the panic of being at the mouth of a volcano. Very cool, but also very scary. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Nevada Triangle. This image from Google Maps captures a spooky symbol that is lurking in the deserts of Nevada. I think conspiracy theorists have forever ruined triangles just in general, but this large one with all the circles inside, coupled with the minimal answers on what it is, definitely makes for a bit of an eerie sight. Right now, the most popular theory as to what this could be is a bombing target. Apparently close by is an Air Force base, so that theory truly would make quite a bit of sense. It could also be some sort of abandoned airstrip perhaps, but of course with any mystery on the internet, there are more very wild theories out there. Of course there's the obligatory "it's aliens" theory, along with some sort of Illuminati idea, but it wouldn't be the internet without it. In our number 6 spot today we have the fire. As the satellites and little cars go by that document the imagery used on Google Maps, they can't exactly predict or control who or what is going to be happening in the area captured. Sometimes it might capture someone who will eventually be blurred out on their front lawn. Sometimes it captures accidents, and in this case it captured an absolutely raging field fire in Arkansas. It would already be terrifying from the ground, but seeing it from this vantage point really shows how large and powerful it is. Someone on Reddit made a good point, saying that it appears as though there are people on the south side, which likely means that the fire is contained and controlled, thankfully, but that doesn't really make it any less cool or interesting to see. In our number 5 spot today we have the Valley of Dolls. Google Maps, especially the street view, is such a great way to look around a place and kind of get your bearings before you even get there. I mean, I remember almost 8 years ago now, before I moved to Toronto, I spent hours digitally walking around the streets, seeing my home, where I was gonna go to school, all that jazz. It was super exciting. But sometimes you walk around a city so unlike your own that it absolutely shocks you, and that is likely what would happen if you were to just stumble upon the town or village of Nagoro in Japan, which is known as the Valley of Dolls. A woman named Ayano Tsukimi grew up in the village and remembers a time when it was full of families and other children just like her, but during her years in secondary school, she and her family moved to Osaka. Ayano continued to grow up, she married and had her own kids, all the while her parents ended up moving back to the town. After her mother passed away, she also moved back to the village in order to help care for her father, and this is when she realized that the population of the town had dropped drastically since her time here as a child. While living here and trying to keep her garden free of crows, she made a scarecrow that resembled her father and she placed it outside. When she realized that those living in the village began to mistake the scarecrow for her father, she had an idea to commemorate those in the village who had passed away with the scarecrow, and boom, 350 dolls later, the town became an attraction for travelers and journalists. It's a bit eerie to peer through on Google Maps, but when the full story is revealed, it gets way less sinister and actually kinda sweet. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Costa Concordia. The Costa Concordia was a huge ship with 17 decks, 6 restaurants, and a 3-story theater. The ship was big enough to hold a whopping 4,200 passengers, so there were a lot of people on this boat on January 13th, 2012. On that day, the boat's captain wanted to sail a little closer to the island of Isla del Giglio than he normally would so that he could impress and salute the residents. He turned off the ship's alarm for the computer navigation system, which turned out to be just as terrible of an idea as you would think it is. He thought he knew the waters well enough to navigate by sight, but when the ship struck an underwater rock, things took a deadly turn. The ship capsized and sank, which unfortunately ended up taking the lives of some of the passengers on board. The captain, who is responsible for the accident in the first place, made one more awful mistake when he abandoned ship while passengers were still stuck on board. The recovery for the ship was the largest of its kind, as the huge ship had been entirely dismantled. You might be wondering why on earth I just told you an entire shipwreck story, and that is because both the wreck as well as the subsequent rescue efforts were visible on Google Earth for quite some time. The satellite imagery probably isn't even as near as terrifying as it must have been to be close during those terrifying days, but it does give us an idea of the size of this disaster. In our number 3 spot today, we have the crater. Space is very cool, but for every cool and interesting thing I learn about it, I also learn one equally or even more terrifying thing about it as well. It's a very scary place, and we truly have no control over the powers of it, which is exactly why this startling image found on Google Earth is an unsettling one. Somewhere in northern Arizona, there is a mark that is like an Earth scar, and it serves as a reminder of a 50,000-year-old meteor strike. When I call it a mark or a scar, I am greatly understating it, as this thing is a huge crater known as the Barringer crater. It's the result of a 150-foot slab of nickel iron that smashed into the earth with the exploding force of 2.5 million tons of TNT. Yeah, this sure makes me glad I wasn't around 50,000 years ago. This natural disaster caused this natural landmark that serves as our reminder of just how small we really are. In our number 2 spot today, we have the scene. This is an image that went viral, with people saying that if you typed in these certain coordinates, that you will see what people think is a man dragging a body down a dock and leaving a bloody trail behind. That would be gruesome, wouldn't it? When looking at the image, it does seem compelling, and that is pretty much what it looks like, although it's definitely still a little unclear. In fact, it was so compelling that Snopes actually did an article on it. The dock is located in the Netherlands, and according to their research into it, Snopes claims that the photo is just a few people walking, and they are likely accompanied by a sort of brown dog, who may have just jumped into the water and then left some watermarks, thus the reasoning for the red-stained wood. That is definitely a less sinister explanation, and it's the one I'm hoping is true. In our number 1 spot today, we have the pond. Davy Lee Niles was 72 years old in 2006 when he disappeared. Sadly, for almost a decade, the case went cold as no one could find him or his car or even figure out what might have happened to him. That was until someone was decorating a Christmas tree in 2015 and was high up on a lift, and they spotted something deep within a pond nearby. That something they spotted turned out to be something that had also been visible on Google Maps for years, and in the end, it was the car that belonged to Davy. And when the authorities went to recover it, they were able to find his body body inside. The car wasn't visible before because at ground level it's just too murky. While the satellite image taken from Google Maps makes it quite clear that there is something there, not too many people are taking a virtual tour around this body of water. Thankfully, that person in 2015 wasn't only aware of their surroundings, but they said something when they saw something, and it was able to lead to closure for the family of Davy. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thank you so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!